The Miami Heat has been one of the most well-run organizations in the NBA. As far as the development and overall culture they've built over the years is second to none. Of course, you got the men in the middle in Pat Riley being a well-known winner for his entire career, being the president of basketball operations for this organization, the same man that selected Eric Spoelstra as head coach in '08, and since then he won back-to-back rings in 2012 and 2013, and now is not only the undisputed best coach in the NBA, but one of the best coaches in history. And then you get Jimmy Butler, a star player in the regular season, but in the playoffs is arguably the best player in the NBA. Alongside with him is star center Bam Adebayo, and role guys that does their role as perfectly as possible due to Eric Spoelstra's coaching. With all that said, you have all the role players that are executing their roles to perfection. That, along with a superstar player and a star player, you should have won a championship, but the Heat never did in the last 5 years. Why is that? So in this video, I'm finna discuss the biggest problem that is preventing the Miami Heat from winning a title. But first, A-Man, say man, this is the A-Man Show, back at it again for another banger here today. Make sure y'all subscribe. I post NBA and NFL content. Turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss anything new from me. Anyways, y'all stay tuned and enjoy the vid. The Miami Heat in the 2019 offseason signed their biggest free agent since LeBron in 2010, and that is signing Jimmy Butler. Before that time, Jimmy Butler was seen as a locker room cancer and a diva, therefore the Sixers were reluctant to give him the contract that he wants, and instead gave it to Tobias Harris, in which, looking back at it today, it was a huge mistake. But anyways, in the same year, the Miami Heat would draft Tyler Hero with the 13th pick in a very high-profile draft class, I might add. And with the roster they have, it was expected that the Heat will be a playoff team, but nothing more than that. And it was looking like the case during the regular season. As we all know, the season got shut down due to COVID, but the Miami Heat finished the regular season as the 5th seed. They were 7th in offensive rating and 11th in defensive rating. They were also one of the best shooting teams in the league, being 6th in three-pointers made and 2nd in three-point percentage. Despite Jimmy Butler being the lone star on the team, even though he did not make an all-star team that year, the rest of the guys were extremely productive role players. Goran Dragic was giving you 16 a game while providing solid shooting, let alone a guy that is reliable in getting you a bucket. Duncan Robinson exploded as a lethal sharpshooting role player. Jay Crowder was a sharpshooter as well, as can defend the perimeter. Kendrick Nunn was a Rookie of the Year candidate, giving you 15 points per game while giving you defense. And of course, Bam Adebayo is giving you production offensively and defensively. He is the main anchor on this team. Despite the limited star power on that team, the Heat was so cohesive as far as chemistry goes. Their execution on offense and defense, especially the lethal zone defense that Spoelstra has implemented despite the lack of size on the roster. And that play style has translated extremely well, so much so that in the bubble, the Heat swept the Pacers in the first round, and then in the second round took down the #1 seeded Bucks with an MVP Giannis on the roster, implementing that zone defensive wall that the Raptors used against Giannis in the East Finals the previous year, and then took down the stacked Celtics in 6 games. Now, the important theme of this video is going to be mentioned as I talk about this finals matchup between the Heat and the Lakers, because despite their elite coaching and cohesive team chemistry, the Lakers also have great coaching as well as cohesive team chemistry. But the only difference is that the Lakers have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and overall the Lakers have so much talent and depth on the roster. It was simply not enough for the Heat to overcome this hurdle, despite Jimmy Butler willing this team to 6 games. But once they take their foot off the gas on Game 6, they got their shit blown out. And this has been the recurring theme about this Miami Heat team. They have the elite coaching, they have guys that are very good in their role, and they have star players in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. But the lack of star power on the roster has led them to always come short towards winning a title. Now, don't get me wrong, the Miami Heat is still the best organization as far as player development goes, especially turning Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, all G League level players into very productive NBA players. And then, of course, team culture and all that. They have gone a long way of doing that by making 3 conference finals appearances and 2 finals appearances. But at a certain point, if you've been to multiple finals appearances, you should be able to win a championship by now. But it hasn't been the case for the Miami Heat. And you know why that's the case. It's because of talent. Sure, after 2020, skipping 21, the Heat was the first seed in the Eastern Conference that year and were top 10 in offensive rating and top 5 in defensive rating, and still is one of the best shooting teams in the league, 6th in 3-point made and 1st in 3-point percentage. Even then, many people didn't really look at them as a real finals contender during that regular season. Now, all of that has changed in the postseason, but it more so to do with Jimmy Butler's incredible playoff run, being arguably the best player of that playoff run. Now, of course, it wasn't a total carry job like a LeBron in 07, Bam Adebayo and the rest of the world guys, along with Eric Spoelstra's coaching, has been the X factors during that postseason run. Even though they lose in the crucial Game 7 in the East Finals, guess what? The Celtics were the more talented team with an elite head coach in Ime Udoka, which aligns with the theme of this video. And then we get to next year with the improbable run that the Heat did as the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, struggling to beat play-in teams and just barely got into the playoffs. And once they got there, they just flipped the switch greater than any other team I've seen in a while, beating the first seeded Bucks, which is not as impressive as the Warriors did in 07 because Giannis went down due to an injury and was out for a couple of games, but they didn't have Tyler Hero throughout that series either, so what's the catch? Anyways, they face a very solid Knicks team, and we all know how Miami played, and having pretty much the same roster as they did the previous year, Miami was the better team. Sir Jimmy Butler wasn't playing out of his mind like in the Bucks series, but the Heat was more team-oriented, and due to Julius Randle and RJ Barrett being abysmal for the entire series, it was basically Jalen Brunson himself. Thus, the Heat advanced to their 3rd conference finals appearance, where they will face the Celtics for the 3rd time this decade. And it was looking like the Heat as the 8th seed, even though they were a lot better than what the record shows and the seed goes. The Celtics were still seen to have the better team, but because of Ime Udoka leaving this roster and promoting Joe Mazzulla, who was at the time a very inexperienced head coach, that will bite them on the ass. The Heat won 3 straight games in the conference finals, despite the Celtics being the better team, but Jimmy Butler, of course, as well as the elite coaching of Eric Spoelstra, that contributed to this perfect execution from each of the role players on the roster, plus the toughness and grittiness that they've played, has contributed to a 3-0 lead. Now, the Celtics did force a Game 7 to attempt to come back from a 3-0 deficit, but the Heat regained their footing and smacked them in their home court to advance to the NBA Finals for the 2nd time and become the 2nd team in NBA history to make a finals appearance as the 8th seed. Now, the magic of this run will fizzle out as they will lose in 5 against the Nuggets, and all because of, you guessed it, an all-time great player in Nikola Jokic, a great head coach in Mike Malone, and most importantly, had way more talent and size on the roster. Now, last year was basically the same thing, despite adding key guys such as Jaime Jaquez Jr. in the draft, and Nikola Jokic is being more involved in the rotation, and during that trade deadline, added Terry Rozier. But even with this roster at full strength, I never really looked at them as a real contender in the Eastern Conference. As you know, Jimmy Butler would get injured after the Sixers game and was out for the remainder of the first round, and without Jimmy Butler, they just couldn't stand a chance against the Celtics, losing in 5 games. And then we get to the offseason, and I have legit concerns about this roster moving forward, because within the last 2 years, you lost Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and now Caleb Martin, 3 of your most valuable role players on the roster. Although you replaced them with Josh Richardson, Alec Burks, and newly drafted Khalil Ware, even with guys such as Nikola Jokic, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, all of these guys around Jimmy Butler, the Miami Heat will never win a championship with this roster, and here's why. Jimmy Butler does not have a legit second option with this team. And I know people will say Bam Adebayo or Tyler Hero, but here's the thing. Adebayo is a top 25 player in the game and really have to do with his incredible defense. But offensively, even though he's a very solid 20-point per game scorer, I don't think is good enough to carry an offense at a championship level when Jimmy Butler is on the bench, compared to the likes of a Jaylen Brown or a Kyrie Irving. And Bam Adebayo's playoff career stats in games prove it. And the same thing goes with Tyler Hero, even though he has been a 20-point per game scorer for quite some time now. And Terry Rozier, even though he's been a 20-point per game scorer, but that's with a shitty Hornets team, so his stats are going to be fluky either way. With that being said, the Miami Heat's peak is only going to be a finals contender, but never a champion, because the teams in the NBA have elite coaches while having more talented rosters on the team compared to the Miami Heat. Now, sure, throughout the last 4 years, the Heat were able to make it to multiple conference finals appearances as well as finals appearances through team culture and player development alone, but they'll never get to the level of a championship favorite because of the lack of star power on this team. And today's league is the most talented we've seen in a while, so you definitely need more than that in order for you to win a championship nowadays. And Pat Riley in the front office has really been reluctant towards getting another star player. And I mean a legit second option on the roster to pair with Jimmy Butler. They missed out on a James Harden, even though it's not that bad because we all know who he is, but they missed out on Damian Lillard, and hell, they didn't even make an effort towards signing Paul George, which is a big miss. And even if it involves a big trade for these guys, the organization is so good at player development, it's not going to be so much of a burden for them to get very productive role players because, like I said, they are known for turning undrafted G League level guys into legit NBA players. So the Miami Heat is basically at a crossroads because Jimmy Butler is not getting any younger. There's no legit second option on this team, and I think in a certain way, the Miami Heat is wasting Jimmy Butler's time in the Miami because what good is it to make multiple finals appearances and have all these all-time great playoff performances and still not win a championship? You play to win a championship, and if you do not, it is a failure, no matter what. So the Miami Heat is still a dark horse finals contender, but they will never be viewed upon as a championship favorite because of the lack of star power on this roster. Thank y'all for watching this video. Be sure to comment below on the Heat or the Miami Heat wasting Jimmy Butler. Let me know, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more NBA and NFL content in the future. And also smash the like button if you enjoyed this video. Turn on post notifications. And that is all. Stay litty. This is the A-Man Show. Sign out.
Storm.